Have you ever reached a major milestone only to feel more depleted than fulfilled? In this episode, my guest expert, Dr. Jessica Singh, shares how to identify burnout despite external success, use simple evidence based mind body practices to regulate stress, and realign your work with your core values. Tune in for a grounded, eye opening conversation on redefining success from inside out. Welcome to Success Reimagined. I am Dr. Amna Shabbir, your host on this journey to thrive at the intersection of ambition and wellness. In every episode, I'll help you challenge outdated definitions of success, discover practical tools and strategies for growth without compromising your well-being. I am so glad you've joined me. Let's reimagine what's possible together. Dr. Jessica Singh, MD, is the founder of Center for Health and Wellness Coaches and a former emergency medicine physician. Her path towards well-being began during training as she navigated her own burnout, leading her to complete Stanford's first fellowship in physician wellness. Now a trauma-informed, board-certified physician coach, she partners with individuals and organizations to strengthen well-being. She also serves as adjunct faculty at NYU, where she leads the Health and Wellbeing Coaching Certificate. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Singh.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shabbir. It's such a joy to be here.
For the rest of the conversation, Amna is fine.
Jessica's fine too. Thank you.
I have been privy to witness some of your journey, but I would love for our audience members to learn some of your highlights of this journey. Why step off the conveyor belt of traditional medicine and do the very interesting things you're doing right now?
In reflection of this journey, I think anyone who takes a direction in life that wasn't planned for, there's always a calling or a reason why. And medicine is so unique because we get into it and we don't even know what the field is until we're done with medical school, done with residency, done with fellowship. And we don't learn about the business of medicine. We don't learn even how insurance works until we're actually practicing medicine. And so I just realized that initially I was drawn to emergency medicine, such a noble field, get to take care of everyone, all ages, all pathologies. And then when you get to practice it, it's like, oh my goodness, you have one person who's responsible for all of this. And then the pandemic happened. And what I realized was when I finished residency, it was the biggest worldly achievement of my life. And I was the most unhappy I had ever been. I had just got married. And I literally told my husband on my graduation day that I felt like I had nothing left to give. And so I couldn't figure out why that was happening. I remember even being told through training, like I'm sure you've had incidences too, where it was completely normal to feel depressed and suicidal. And so there's this dichotomy of how you appear to the world and then what's really going on inside. And so before I took my first job as an attending, my boss was so nice. Everyone worked longer hours because I wanted to do a 1-month yoga teacher training. I had no intention for anything, just to heal myself. It was on my bucket list, and I was like, this needs to happen now. And it was the first time in my life I ever learned about health, that I was ever even in a classroom where people weren't competitive, where we talked to each other, view each other as one, and talked about things outside of career. And I didn't really know people could relate to each other that way or exist that way. And I didn't know what was happening at that time, but that kind of healing and nurturing, it gave me strength to heal myself while I still practice emergency medicine, prepared for my boards. But it also gave me the clarity to help me redefine my values, my why in life. And so when the time came, I had done fellowship during the time of the pandemic. It was the first time that I learned about all the systems drivers to burnout. And it seems crazy, but 5 years ago, burnout wasn't as much of a buzzword as it is now. I don't remember learning about it in residency. I don't know if you did. So I I just realized that you could stay in the system and fight the good fight from within, or you could follow your passions and make change from outside. The things I wanted to learn, how to get to the root of healing, wanted to learn more about yoga, Ayurveda, mind body techniques. That's how it started. I couldn't do that in the way I wanted to on an attending schedule in an academic university in emergency medicine. And emergency medicine at that point as a new attending is one of those fields where if you work part-time, it's really hard, or at least for me, to if I haven't intubated someone in months, to just do it once in a blue moon. It seemed more or less an all or nothing decision at the time.
I love so much about that share. The biggest thing that you have shared with us is this permission that we can honor our inner calling. And to your point earlier, no, I didn't hear the word specifically burnout per se when I was going through my medical training either. There was a lot of talk about more of compassion fatigue or empathy. And I had wonderful training and, really, really amazing attendings. Like my medical training journey has been nothing but supportive, and I am so happy about that. But disillusionment comes for us all, as my prior guest, Frances May Harden, who decided to walk away from surgery, shared in medicine. And for me, it came during the early career years. But thank you for sharing that specific moment. Like, what an amazing decision, and how conscientious you are, recognizing that. Yeah, I mean, I need to do procedures all the time to be doing it, versus I can step away and redefine myself on my own terms.
Absolutely. I will be very honest with you, and I'm wondering if you've experienced the same in your career trajectory, and I know your previous guests, but I will tell you the initial year or two that I stepped away, there was a lot of guilt associated with it. There are maybe 330 million people, for instance, in this country, and there are less than 50,000 board certified emergency medicine physicians. And so each one of us, a primary care, you know it, there is such an impact that we make. And so I felt, oh my goodness, if I step away, am I letting all these patients down? And you keep questioning yourself. I actually was like, okay, if I keep my license, I can go back. I made a full switch and let go to allow that space, mental space, psychological space, energetic clearing to shift. But it's a huge decision, not one to be taken lightly. And the fact that so many physicians are doing it, it says a lot about the system.
I'm going to contain myself and not get on the soapbox to answer that, but it goes to absolutely point out the largely systemic, completely prevalent problem that we're having in medicine right now. And I mean, it's agonizing. What you've mentioned, it wasn't like, yeah, you woke up one day and you said, no, peace out. Like, this is not how this decision works. It's deeply painful, the moral obligation and the moral debt that you feel after years of training, everything that you've been through. And what a privilege to be a physician, having a front seat to so much of what our patients go through. Like the experiences that you have with a patient, there's no space on earth that you can have that front seat to humanity. So, absolutely, I appreciate you mentioning that. I'm going to
Thank you.
switch gears just a little bit. You have now really delved into so many of these other healing modalities, and I'm curious, and I want all our audience members to go on this journey with you, right? We hear this term mind body medicine, but often we don't even know what the term signifies. What does it mean? Can you please break it down for us so we can understand it better?
I'd love to. And it was really funny. When I started thinking about it, just ask yourself this basic question. In order to define the term, you have to define all the words in the term. There are only three words: mind, body, medicine. Body, we all know, medicine, the art of science of healing. What is the mind? Like, if you were to take your finger and point to the mind, and this is for all the listeners out there, where would you point?
Oh, I think I would point everywhere, but yeah, primarily up there.
Yeah, exactly. And what you said about pointing everywhere. And so it's like the mind is not this physical organ, it's this name given, right, to our intellectual processes, our thoughts. Where does it exist? And there's so many research papers, there's so many philosophical debates. So my goal is not to go there on the show. The goal is just to break it down, like you said. And so basically, stemming off definitions from the National Institutes of Health and from the Center for Mind Body Medicine, which is a nonprofit, which has really had been a pioneer in this field. Mind body medicine basically focuses on the interactions with the brain, the mind, body, and behavior, and the powerful ways in which emotional, mental, social, spiritual, and behavioral factors directly affect health. In medicine, we go through, even from when we go in, anatomy, skeletal system, cardio system, everything is a separate system. And yes, you have to break it down to learn it. But unfortunately, the way our pathology is, the way our treatment is every organ, there's so much division and compartmentalization. And then it's like, oh, you find out later on that a drug that works on the gut actually has an effect on the brain. Well, duh, right now it's clear to us. And so, when thinking about mind body medicine, it's really looking at things just beyond the physical, realizing that there's so much that affects us in our ability to heal. And what's going to affect one part of the body is going to affect another part of the body. And so, just as you know, so many stress is such a cause of disease, of chronic disease and lifestyle. But where does it come from? We're not in a jungle running away from lions and tigers and bears. It's when we go to our workplace, there's so many external demands created on us, and that gives us that constant fight or flight response, constant sympathetic system overdrive. And just as our body creates these responses and responses to the demands placed on us, it can result in disease with overstimulation. Similarly, we can work in the opposite direction. If our mind can be so powerful with stress and have this impact on the body, can it not have that same exact ability to heal and undo all of that? And that's something not often taught in medical education.
Very interesting. And I just also want to point out to our audience members, especially the ones that are listening, how calming Dr. Singh's voice is. So yeah, I'm sure all the audience members are also thinking that. Now, I love that you describe it in this almost harmonious, synchronous way in which it basically embodies all parts of our existence. Now, you're right now talking to a lot of high achievers. This is everyone who is a ultra successful and yet burnout. And I will also say workaholism because that's something I personally experienced after I removed a lot of the organizational sort of burden that I had and I found myself in entrepreneurship. I realized that workaholic in me was very much there. A lot of purpose and fulfillment then vacillates because of this. Can you share maybe some techniques or wellness concepts that these busy individuals that are tuned in today can start leaning into right away?
Sure. So the first one, it sounds simple, but it's been so life changing for me. And I know for you as well and what you shared, but it's just grounding in your why. So, regardless of how busy the day is, when you wake up in the morning, first thing in the bed, before you get dressed, brush your teeth, look at your phone, just as you lay in bed and your eyes open, what is the expression on your face? What is the emotion? Are you happy to wake up? Are you waking up with a task? How do you identify yourself in that early stage of consciousness? So, and then the same again before bed at night. So, just even if you just have a few seconds to check in with yourself, it really yields a lot of information, just this two precious times of the day. And grounding into, so then what is your why? So, regardless of what industry you're in, regardless of how much you're functioning at work, as you reflect on all of the tasks of the day, how much is what you're doing aligning with your sense of purpose in this life? Does it have to be done by you? Can it be done by someone else? And even if it can be done by someone else, does it bring you joy? One of the things that I am so grateful to medicine, and I know at geriatrics you see at the end of life, in emergency medicine as well, I think one of the most eye opening experiences were having people my age or younger die. And it really got me to thinking, if today was my last day, would I be grateful? Or what would I be grateful for in this life? And so when people talk about transferring skills from like medicine to another field, I think that perspective has just changed how I live life. So no matter how busy you are, what are you grateful for? So that's one thing that has been life changing. And so I'll just pause. I have a couple more to see how that resonates with you.
Well, that resonated very deeply with me because I think that what's happening is, as a high performer, high achiever, every second and millisecond of your life requires optimization, right? So my husband makes fun of me at this point. Like when I wake up, I don't sit. I'm just off to the races, right? So I have had to learn to slow down because none of these, the grounding and none of that, the check-in with yourself can happen when you are just rushing, just like rushing. I was reading this book. It's an old book. Pretty much everyone has read it. Tim Ferriss's 4 Hour Work Week, right? So it's all about optimization. And he talks about something called speed addiction in it. And so that's really what came to my mind as I'm thinking, like, even on vacation, I'm like, okay, how can we optimize this? So I really appreciate this call to ground yourself in your why, in your purpose, and in gratitude. And yes, I would love to learn more.
Yeah, I thank you for sharing how it relates with you. The second one that so there are two other sciences I just want to mention and to give the context. This is Just to mention them as a science and a healing modality, non denominational, just grounded in where they come from. So much of mind body techniques are also indigenous cultures, indigenous wisdom that we embody, and they're universally human. So, as I had mentioned before, and we started this with mind body techniques, so this all resonates. One of the things that has been a lifesaver for me and my family in so many ways has just been yoga. And people think about yoga as this physical exercise. Really, when you learn about it, it's not. It's a science to transcend this like monkeying of the mind, how our mind has a tendency to go everywhere. And in Sanskrit, the word is the union of the individual consciousness with the absolute or consciousness, I guess divine, but there's an absolute consciousness. And so, what I love about this is, especially how it relates to perfectionism and workaholism, is the fact that we have a tendency, we as humans, to identify with our work, to identify with what we do rather than just being. And grounding in this yoga, grounding in it's a science for teaching us how to not falsely identify. Because when we falsely identify, for instance, with the body, and if something happens to the body, illness, injury, whatever it is, it's devastating. And how do you get beyond that? And so, what I really love about yoga is the science behind it, and that there are also different ways. So, we had talked about mind body medicine before and how the body relates. In yoga, there are 5 koshas. So, it's a different way of thinking about the body. There's this physical sheath, an energy sheath, a mental sheath, a wisdom sheath, or an intuitive body. And then there's a bliss body. And so it's just like, if you were to go into quantum physics or quantum mechanics and just look at your finger under a microscope, where do the electrons around your finger end and the air around you begins? And so much has like there's so much now that's showing with quantum physics as well, and research about how we're all interconnected, and the energy you give out to the universe you get back. And so it's just what I find with yoga is it's about transcending the physical, even though it uses the physical to stabilize the mind. And so for anyone who's busy, it doesn't matter what your daily routine is, as long as you do it consciously. So whether it's a walk to your car, whether it's drinking your food or drinking your coffee in the morning, whatever it is, can you be fully present just for the moments to do the action at hand in front of you? And that's kind of what the essence is. It's living life with conscious awareness.
That's beautiful. And the word that comes to my mind is presencing completely. Presence. And that was really what was missing in my life when I was deep in burnout because I was so exhausted and so depleted, so overworked. And when I was going through mental health struggles, right, I was never where I was. So I feel that there are large chunks of my life that have been blocked from memory because I was mentally absent. I was physically somewhere else, mentally somewhere else. And so, truly, if I can be in this moment, I do think that is so powerful. And all of this conversation that we're having right now would make the past Amna extremely uncomfortable because I like to see numbers and data and statistics, and I like to be optimized and I like to rush. And none of this, like I am laughing that my past version would just be so uncomfortable right now. The first time I had to follow a guided mindfulness, I just couldn't believe it. I was looking around like, are we seriously actually going to do this? Am I going to do this? And it was so powerful.
I really appreciate your sharing that too, because sometimes even preparing to speak, when you speak with more evidence minded people or logic based people, it's like, okay, I need to know the latest research. Well, guess what? No, an N of one, an example of one, there is enough out there. But in terms of the science point, so there's a woman, a Dr. Deborah Norris, and she has a beautiful book called Into the Flow. But basically, it goes into telomere science. And even the woman who discovered telomeres has a book called The Telomere Effect, which shows that telomeres are the pieces of DNA on the end of chromosomes that prevent the chromosomes from aging. And so there are factors that influence and protect those telomeres, and meditation is one of them. And so they did a study on interns, actually, those who are in their first year of residency, and it was a small study, like 80 to, I don't remember how many people there were, but it showed that their telomere shortened at a rate that was faster than age compared peers. And so even on a very biological level, there is a lot of evidence out there. And also it's the same with sleep. Sleep is always such a important topic, but you can go to sleep and wake up the next morning and not feel rested or have poor quality sleep, whatever it is. If you get into a meditative state or yoga, your basal metabolic rate actually increases way more. I mean, increases more than it does during sleep. There's been studies to show that. And so there's so much out there in terms of the science that, when you talk about feeling comfortable with these conversations, it's so wonderful that people like you are becoming more of an advocate and providing space for this to happen because it's beyond this like textbook evidence-based stuff that we're learning that's also super influenced by big pharma and insurance.
My goodness. Yeah, I feel that we can have this conversation because I've also been increasingly very averse to what is essentially pseudoscience, right? So you and I can have this conversation because we have specific training when it comes to biostatistics, the interpretation. What is the difference between causation and correlation? And of course, there's a certain level of ethics and morality and consciousness, all of that tied together that goes into reviewing data and talking about it, right? With the wild land of the wellness influencers, being cognizant and having this conversation, but also remembering not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think it's so important. So I appreciate you sharing that.
I appreciate that too, because that's so important for anyone listening. All these techniques are meant to be taken what the best of it is with the evidence. And obviously, allopathic medicine is there for a reason. The evidence based science is there not to do harm. So, taking the best of both worlds is so key.
I love that. And you earlier mentioned perfectionism, and we're talking about healing. We're talking about high pressure environments. I'm curious to know, in helping the many humans that you have in your own life and your personal journey, how has perfectionism shown up? Has it shown up?
Yes, of course. It's interesting because it ties into what you just said. So, in terms of even having, for instance, healing conversations, there's this, you want to make sure it's evidence based, that we're doing no harm, that we're not talking about pseudoscience. And you can maybe say there's a bit of perfectionism in wanting to heal in a certain way or talking about healing in a certain way. And it's not just you, it's how it's perceived mainstream. So, for anyone, for any workaholism, or when you're trying to heal people, it's like, do I have to learn the science perfectly? Is it on me to learn it perfectly? Or do I have to show up and do I have to do things? So, one of the biggest things is if I'm going to help people, do I have to walk the talk myself? Does that mean I'm never going to have sugar again? Or does it mean I'm never going to, So the perfectionism shows up even, I think, a lot in trying and for self care. And that's something I think a lot of people can relate to because it's like if you set a goal for yourself, so I'll be very tangible. One of the goals is okay, if I want to wake up, let's say at 4:30 every morning. So I don't wake up one day at 4:30 every morning. Am I going to start a spiral? So it's one of those, or so after a certain point of career transition, a lot of the external expectations I placed on myself is like, okay, she's a doctor, she's done X, Y, and Z. Is she expected to be this successful at this time, like financially successful? And what if I don't meet all the metrics that I feel people are putting on me? Guess what? These are things that I feel people are putting on me, which may or may not be true. It's stuff that I've mostly created. And so you had asked before, what is something that people can lean into is really looking at expectations and seeing where are they coming from? Are they coming from other outside? Are they coming from inside? And it's fine if they come from external sources. It's a good thing. But do they align with how we are inside? I think that that's really key. And so one of the things, the grounding routines and is very simple. It's this technique in Ayurveda called dinacharya, which is just having a daily routine. I remember in residency, I didn't really have one because there's so much shift work. And when I graduated, it was like 5 minutes in the morning just to have coffee, peace and quiet for myself. And that's how my morning routine started. It's a lot longer now than 5 minutes, but no matter what is going on, it's like that time of the day is meant to ground and to have that stability and alignment. Because if it's not there with me, how can I put it out there in the world?
Well, that is so beautiful. And I love that perspective that you bring in terms of how we look at healing and perfectionism. And I mean, okay, I'll go there. I was thinking, so I'll go there. I have recently been having what I would say anhedonia and, experiencing some of these feelings. And then I was like, well, what's wrong with me? And, well, I mean, I needed to go check in with my doctor, so there were actual physical symptoms that required attention. But working in this space, I always say that I'm not perfect. But anytime I have something like this show up, the first feelings are you an imposter? Like, should you be feeling this way? Are your concerns valid? And so what I saw that this yearning, this appearing to be perfect to the outside world, which is a lot leaning into impression management, makes me sort of gaslight myself when I'm having a moment, a human moment, having actual symptoms. So because that's I'm healed. I'm on the other side. Like this isn't that it's all rainbows and sunshine because that's what all of these self-proclaimed self-help gurus are like pushing against, like as if there was some invisible proverbial line of before and after. Be very careful of people who say things like that because life is a journey.
Absolutely. And I think it's also accepting all parts of us. So, yes, just because we show up and we're able to make an impact and be successful at work, you know, you're not going to perform the same day, the same exact way every day. And having that same compassion for life. Sometimes things happen. Sometimes our body needs rest. Sometimes life emergencies happen and it takes time. I feel like we put on a face professionally, and the work we do is important, but the biggest work that nobody sees is the stuff in our personal and home lives. So, how do we account for that?
Absolutely. Because we are the same person. It's not that anytime you're going to talk about workplace well being, you are the same human that goes to work and you take all of that with you home and then you bring everything that's happening from home to work. So it's all for the better. We are the same human and the emphasis on the word of humanity and being human. So I appreciate you sharing that. You are the founder of Center for Health and Wellness Coaches. Please share more about what the center offers and why did you create this?
Be very transparent with you. When I first started switching into this space, my motivation was learning to heal at the root. And then the second motivation was trying to get into healthcare organizations to make systems change because that's so much of what contributes to work, to physician dissatisfaction. There's a lot of red tape in getting to organizations. And yes, I'm so grateful for those, such as yourself, who fight that good fight, and I will continue to fight it. But one of the personal mottos that I've learned, and it's even how NYU happened, is to go where you are received. Do what you need to do that aligns with you, help the people you need to help. If there's no pathway being paid for you from an organization, create it yourself. We can do it. Like this world allows us to just create what we want to do, which is incredible. And look at everything that you've done. And so I initially started off with a coaching practice, and I thought I would be offering yoga, Ayurveda, and coaching. And for me, and I'm grateful to the yoga and Ayurvedic practitioners out there, but for me, it got too spiritual. I didn't want to do that as a business. And so I focused on coaching. And coaching I love because it's non-denominational, and it really takes, I feel like, the best part of medicine that I love, empowering everyone, helping them figure out their own wisdom, and learning how to build off of what all those years of training have already done, especially health and well-being coaching. And so what I realized with coaching, though, it's kind of like being in the wild, wild west. Once you're done with your coach training, which is wonderful, but it's like this isolated bubble, right? Where you practice on your classmates, maybe you take a test. Once you're done, it's like, how do you know if you're doing it right? And there's so many people who claim to be coaches, and they aren't coaching. They're doing a service, but I wouldn't call it coaching, at least not by the way that's a thought partnership without leading and guiding. So the Center for Health and Wellness Coaches came about because I realized that, hey, I would really do a better job in this world if I had a community. I learned the most from mentors and people in the field. And so I find that as an entrepreneur, solutions happen when you realize there is a problem or something missing. So the goal was really to provide evidence based resources, collaborate community, provide a resource for coaches that coaches can trust, and we can all learn and grow together.
That is so beautiful. And it makes me very happy and feel like a lot of psychological safety because you're providing professional development for coaches that have gone through appropriate channels for certification and are actually creating that thought partnership right there and helping actually not just communities, helping patients, helping clinicians really give good care and the programs that you offer are phenomenal. So we're going to link to all of those in the show notes, but I highly encourage our audience members to go check out all of them. So I really appreciate you sharing that. Now, looking back at your personal journey of healing and evolution, some snapshots that you've shared with us today, what advice would you give your younger self? You can pick any age timeline that you want.
If I ever so advice I would give my younger self is if I find myself continually suppressing an emotion or an incident that happened that is showing and impacting everything, and I feel like I can't talk to anyone about it, it would be to find a place where I can talk about it and process it safely. I feel like far too often we carry incidents, even from childhood, from adolescence, into our work now, because they stay with us and the impressions we make on ourselves. And so, if I could give myself any advice or compassion or self love, it would be don't suppress anything, find a safe place to release it. And also to have self compassion. So much of what we do, or I feel like the trauma we undergo or the mistakes we think we're making are not our, I don't want to release blame. We're all responsible for our actions, we're all conscious beings, but so much of it is due to our environment. And so I know this may not be related to what we talked about today, but I feel like just in reflecting on the journey, I would just come from a space of more self compassion and to heal rather than to suppress.
Self compassion will always be my favorite go to and the most difficult hill that I will continue to go up and down, up and down. That really fluctuates for me, but it is also the most powerful work that I've done on myself and the work that I've done with my clients, and I'm sure you're witnessing that. So I love that recommendation. And I wrote something that you said earlier. Go where you are received. That is so powerful, whether that's from an entrepreneurial standpoint or a relationship standpoint.
Yeah, this I know you'd asked about the Center for Health and Wellness Coaches. One of the things that I realized that I love to do is combine all that medicine. It's such a unique field because we have all this health and wellness knowledge from medicine. And then this coaching knowledge, and physicians have such a unique, rich experience, like you had talked about before, that privilege of those patient interactions. And so, I just feel so blessed, not only for the opportunity through the Center for Health and Wellness Coaches, but to build a health and wellness coach training program for NYU, because that, to me, to do it in an academic space it was my alma mater of all places. When I think about impact, fulfillment, and all high achievers, everyone listening to your podcast, you think about legacy. And so that guilt that we talk about as a physician, you first feel when you leave. Yeah, as a physician, if you see 40 patients a week, I think I did the math, you see thousands of patients, right? And including their loved ones and everything. But if you can help one physician or two, and that's not setting the bar too high. You're helping the impact, the ripple effect of that is so great. And so anyone in leadership development, right? That's what keeps the fulfillment there is this ripple effect of that alignment and it starts within.
That is that's an incredible reality, that is not just something that we can think of. I'm smiling because I'm thinking about all the incredible clients that are leaders that have helped and how the trickle down effect of what that does to their workplaces, whether that is in or outside of healthcare. And especially, yes, like all the amazing physicians and advanced practice providers that have helped. It's so beautiful that then they're gonna go and not just create that micro and macro change. It's a domino effect that just goes, comes back to you. So it's a very beautiful feeling.
Absolutely.
Dr. Singh or Jessica, I was supposed to say Jessica. This has been so amazing. I mean, I could sit and chat with you all day, and I have done that extensively in the past. You are a dear friend. Any concluding pearls of wisdom, they don't have to be related, anything on your heart or mind that you want to share. And congratulations on your incredible like creating that certification program for NYU. That is huge. So I'm celebrating you as well as I'm asking you for any parting words of wisdom.
I'm so grateful just to know you as a human being and you're so beautiful, like from the inside out. My parting words is just when you look at yourself, when we look at ourselves or just look at another person, if you remove the title, remove, the formalities of how you know them and just look at them, their energy, their humanity, their spirit, and just see what you feel. How do you relate to yourself and relate to the people around you? I think that when I bring myself to look at that, it helps me go beyond all the noise and just get to the heart of what feels good inside. So, for anyone listening to this, even if it starts with yourself, just relating to yourself fully, accepting the whole of who you are without any judgments, even if you can just, for a few moments a day, give yourself that gift, it is life changing.
On that extremely inspiring note, how can our audience members learn more about your work and connect with you?
Sure. LinkedIn is great. I have a couple of podcasts. Dr. Shabbir, we've been so blessed to have you on the podcast as well. So fortunate to have you on the podcast. But LinkedIn has a lot of information, and then the website, www.centerforhealthandwellnesscoaches.com. You'll find a lot there.
Thank you, Jessica. You might believe you don't have the time or energy to focus on yourself, but this is exactly the right time to get serious about your well-being. You don't have to do it all alone. I'm here to help. If you enjoyed this video and are ready to take the next step, head over to dramnashabir.com where you'll find free resources you can access right away. The website link is below. Let's get started on your path to thriving.